on Tuesday, February 13, 2024. The committee is resuming its study of the impact of disinformation and of misinformation on the work of parliamentarians.
We welcome our witness for the first hour today from Bell Media, Inc. We've got Mr. Richard Gray, Vice President of CTV News. Mr. Gray, welcome. I understand all the tests have been completed on your Zoom, and you have up to 5 minutes to present your opening statement to the committee. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I am pleased to be here to contribute to your study on misinformation and disinformation, which are important issues facing Canadians. As Canada's most watched news source, CTV News is keenly attuned to the challenges of a changing information ecosystem. In a rapidly evolving world, it is more important than ever that Canadians have access to fair and balanced news coverage they can trust. As a reputable news organization in a democracy, it is the fundamental purpose of CTV News to enable Canadians to know what is happening and to clarify events so they may form their own conclusions. This is done through accurate, fair, and relevant stories told in a clear and compelling way. I want to recognize the tireless work of CTV News journalists and staff who go above and beyond every day to uphold our mandate with the highest standards of honesty, transparency, and independence. It is not always easy work, but it is important work and it deserves to be recognized. For over 60 years, CTV News has kept Canadians informed of the stories that matter to them. In recent years, this has included a once-in-a-generation pandemic, elections at home and abroad, natural disasters, geopolitical crises, economic issues, and much more. Thanks to the hard work of its journalists and staff, CTV News is consistently named Canada's most trusted news source. This is something we are very proud of because trust is something we take very seriously. Our mandate is to uphold journalistic integrity and independence under all circumstances and at all times without exception. We are a member of the Trust Project, a global network of news organizations, and draw on tools they've developed to help Canadians make informed news choices. As a news team, we have a responsibility to hold people and organizations with power and influence accountable to the public, and that responsibility extends to how we manage our own affairs. In this industry, mistakes sometimes happen, despite our best efforts. I am of the belief that how we respond to those mistakes is critical to maintaining public trust. This brings me to an issue that has garnered attention recently. A report on the CTV national news broadcast on September 22nd did not meet our expected and required high editorial standards. As is standard practice in these circumstances, we conducted an investigation to determine whether a breach of our editorial standards and practices had occurred. The investigation found that 2 members of the CTV News team were responsible for altering a video clip. Their actions violated our editorial standards and are unacceptable. As a result, those individuals are no longer members of the CTV News team nor employed by any Bell Media entity. This is a deeply regrettable situation. In my 33-year career working in television news, this is the first time I have come across something like this. I hope that our response speaks to the importance we place on upholding our commitment to fairness, objectivity, and the truth. Our duty is to provide accurate, fair, and balanced coverage of the issues that matter to Canadians, and to do so fully independently. It's of the utmost importance to us. Moving forward, we will continue to work to earn the trust of the millions of Canadians who rely on us each and every day. And given the growing demand for round-the-clock news coverage, CTV News will continue to transform the way we deliver news to Canadians, both on television and online. As someone with decades of experience in the news business, I have seen firsthand the decline in the trust in the media, in no small part to the rise of misinformation and disinformation and their impact on media literacy. This concerns all of us. I hope we can spend our time together today discussing this challenge and potential solutions to combat misinformation and disinformation so we can maintain and build trust in our institutions for the years to come.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gray. Appreciate you being under time. Just one of the things I found myself saying lately is that the dynamics between Zoom and in-person sessions is one that's difficult to manage. Oftentimes, members with the limited time that they have will try to reclaim their time. I don't want you to take that personally, Mr. Gray. So we're going to start with our first 6-minute round. I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Mr. Barrett. I'm so glad I got this coverage.
How much money
does Bell Media or CTV News receive in annual subsidies from Justin Trudeau's Liberal government?
Unlike the CBC, CTV nor CTV News receive any subsidies from the government. In fact, we're required to spend at least 30% of our annual revenue each year, which amounts to $1.2 billion since 2011 on Canadian programming expenditures. At the same time as all of this, we are losing $185 million a year on our television operations, including a loss of $40 million on news alone.
So CTV hasn't received any regulatory relief or no wage relief in the last 9 years. Is that your contention?
We receive no subsidies from the government.
The question was regulatory relief or subsidies for wages in the last 9 years?
So there was a decision made by the federal government recently that amounted to having a $40 million impact on Bell Media, but it was not a subsidy. It was, in fact, the elimination of a tax on our revenues that had existed since 1997.
$40 million in regulatory relief. I will skip ahead of you, and $122 million in subsidies for wages. So I want to talk about, pardon me?
The $40 million was not a subsidy.
Sir, you're correcting something that I didn't say. So let's just get off on the right foot here. I referred to it as regulatory relief. $40 million in regulatory relief. Did you receive $40 million in regulatory relief?
We received $40 million in relief through the elimination of a tax.
That's a regulatory relief, man.
Okay. So I have a sense of how this is going to go. So let's go. We've seen a lot of examples of CTV activism masquerading as journalism. And I want to give you a couple examples of that. On May 29th of this year, you published a story that was titled, Poilievre Panned for Video Saying Canadians Fleeing for Nicaragua. Now, of course, this story was about the leader of the opposition talking to Canadians who are suffering after 9 years of a government whose economic vandalism has made it all but impossible for millions of Canadians to survive here. But on April the 2nd, just days later, when RBC releases a report on housing trends and affordability, toughest time ever to afford a home as soaring interest costs keep raising the bar, again detailing the results of 9 years of...
Oh. Man, Parliament's really bad today. Microsoft's having an issue. Sorry, guys. Let me see how quick I can get this back. Man, this is a bugger. Okay, come on, man.
On Canadians who are spread on across your platforms, where
come on, they're having such problems today.
You altered that quote from Mr. Poilievre into one that reflected talking points from Justin Trudeau's Prime Minister's office. So we wouldn't know about that most recent case if you weren't called out by a Conservative staffer. And you said you're sorry, but we know that you're sorry that you're only sorry that you got caught. Isn't that right?
I disagree with your characterization.
So are you sorry?
We have apologized twice for a mistake that occurred. We have
back and reviewed all of your coverage of Mr. Poilievre and his discussions about the Trudeau Liberals' carbon tax on everything that they plan to, of course, quadruple, raising the price of gas to 60 cents a litre. That's seen 1 in 4 Canadians not know where their next meal is coming from. Food bank use skyrocket to records never seen before in this country. Have you gone back and reviewed all of your coverage of Mr. Poilievre, or will it be incumbent on Conservatives to have to go through and review historically the disinformation that CTV has perpetrated on Canadians, or Or is that something that CTV is going to proactively do? Because I can assure you, sir, that going forward, we know that we now need to do this not just for ourselves, but for Canadians, because certainly the trust has been broken.
I want to give Mr. Grayson a chance to answer that, Mr. Barrett. Go ahead.
So thank you. I disagree with the characterization that we are engaged in a campaign of disinformation with respect to Canadians. It's our job to present all sides of public policy issues in a balanced, accurate, and fair way so Canadians can make informed decisions on them. That's what we do consistently on a daily basis. This particular issue that happened on September the 22nd,
sir,
was a very rare and unique occurrence.
Well, I'd be interested to know how I would be interested to know how you verified that it was rare if you didn't go back and review all of the other instances of coverage. Like I said, I'd like you to tell us now, though, do you think it's appropriate for other media organizations that have criticized that Conservatives called out this disinformation when you yourself admitted that you were wrong? The question is, do you think it is appropriate for other media outlets to have criticized this disinformation having been called out?
Quick response, please, Mr. Gray.
It's not for me to suggest how other media outlets operate. My job is to manage CTV News.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Thank you, Mr. Gray. I'm going to go to Ms. Shanahan now for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank the witness for appearing before us today. Mr. Gray, I'd like to ask you what steps do CTV News journalists and newsroom managers typically take to ensure that aired reports meet the current journalistic and ethical standards? And I'm looking for a rather fulsome response because we want to understand. I don't know if anyone here has worked in a newsroom. I certainly have not. We want to understand what the process is kind of from the beginning, to the aired product.
So I think the first and most important component part of my answer to your question is that we have very rigorous and steadfast policies that spell out the expectations as to how our journalism is conducted. In addition to these policies,
Holy smokes, man.
The expectations as to how our journalism is conducted. In addition to these policies.
Sorry, guys, this isn't me, man. This isn't YouTube. This is just straight Parliament.
Follow those
been having problems all
policies
day.
To the absolute letter. And with respect to particular news stories, they are all vetted by a senior member of the team prior to their going to air to ensure that they are factually correct and that there are no legal issues with respect to the content. What specifically happened in this case on September the 22nd was that those policies and codes of ethics were violated by two individuals at CTV National News. In one case, a reporter altered a script after it had been approved by the producer, significantly changing the meaning and the intent of a particular clip to better suit the requirements of the story they were attempting to tell. In the second case, an editor spliced fragments of two segments of a statement together, creating a clip that hadn't actually been spoken in order to cover a technical issue with the original recording. In my 33 years working in television news, I cannot recall anything similar to this ever happening before.
So how does it happen? How do the newsroom managers, I take it that would be the senior person that would be responsible for making sure that this didn't happen. So there's questions there as to where were they. How do they ensure that they are broadcasting accurately and that it reflects the facts without any tampering? Like, do you have some kind of technical way of checking that? And of course, we're living in an era today where deep fakes and video alteration and so on is almost child's play.
So we have a elaborate process of verifying all facts. It's multi-layered. But even with that check and balance, It would have been impossible in this case to catch this error, because as I said a few moments ago, what happened here is that the script that was produced and approved by the producer was later altered, and altered in two ways, by the reporter and by the editor. Again, this is something I have never seen and have no experience dealing with in my 33 years in television news.
Buddy, it's very
A
simple.
long
You
time
edited
now,
the video.
Mr. Gray, the Conservative
Purposely.
Party leader has been attacking mainstream media and journalists with the intention to mislead and to make Canadians believe that news networks that they have trusted before are no longer trustworthy. Can you comment on the dangers that this presents to the state of Canada's information ecosystem and our democracy?
Oh, cry more, Brenda. Defund the CBC.
I mean, it's critically important that there be absolute trust in all of our institutions, both the media and our government. And there has been a general erosion in that trust over the last number of years. I think
That is due to public statements by political leaders such as Pierre Poilievre.
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think it is the result of a number of things, probably the biggest one being that there has been a shift in our society where there is a more prevailing attitude that if you're not with us, you're against us.
Oh, that's very interesting. How then are these risks then exasperated when a situation such as the one with CTV News, as discussed earlier, happens? In other words, if you're not with us, you're against us kind of attitude.
Yeah, you're not winning this one, Brenda. He's not giving you what you want.
I think that the key point to be made here, and I have tried to do this in my response to questions up to this point, is to say this: we made a mistake. It was a mistake that was impossible to foresee. We
Stop saying that.
apologized immediately. We took follow-up steps to ensure that our standards were being met. It was determined that they weren't. We, as a result of that, made the decision that the two employees involved would no longer be part of CTV News or Bell Media,
Okay.
and then we apologized again.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you,
it's
Mr.
not
Gray,
impossible
Ms.
to
Shanahan.
catch your editor.
Mr. Gray, en avant de
The clip is
commencer avec...
reviewed.
Mr. Gray, before
There's a producer who reviews it. Oh, here we go again.
going to questions from Mr. Villemure,
Wow, I caught that quick.
I think he is going to ask his questions in French.
Interpretation is working. Okay?
It is.
Okay. Monsieur Villemure, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Commencez.
Mr. Villemure, you have 6 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for being with us today. We are conducting a study on the impact of disinformation on parliamentarians. So for us, it's a risk to our democracy. And you touched upon a point, the point being confidence in politicians diminishing, and confidence in media is also diminishing. So can you elaborate a bit more on the source of why this is happening?
It's very difficult to say. I think if I was to suggest probably the biggest cause, it is social media and the proliferation of social media and the manner by which it is consumed. Information that is shared on social media does not have information that is shared on social media does not have
Holy crap, man. They got to fix their servers today.
applied to it as we apply, as other media institutions like the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, Global News, CBC apply to their operations. And as a result of that, it becomes much more difficult for people to know what they can trust, who they can trust, what they should trust.
Qu'est-ce que la désinformation?
What is disinformation for CTV? What's your definition of it?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Vos yeux.
How do you define disinformation?
Disinformation, from my perspective, is anything that is inaccurate.
Est-ce que CTV a été la...
Has CTV been the target of disinformation, for instance, from a foreign influence?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
CTV est prêt...
Is CTV concerned about the risk of disinformation or foreign interference?
You know, I am always concerned about the accuracy and the veracity of the journalism that we do based on the source material that's provided to us. It's why we use multiple stories, all independently verified by CTV.
Je résume votre pensée.
So disinformation is caused mainly by social media, and you're the victims of it. Should I understand it that way?
I would say that is the prevailing factor, at least from my perspective, in this country.
Un peu plus tôt, vous avez mentionné
Earlier, you referred to the existence of an ethics code for journalists. Now, it's my area of expertise. The ethics code usually protects the people who drafted it rather than other groups. So beyond having signed a code of ethics, how does CTV make sure that you're not broadcasting disinformation or misinformation? Can you please remind us the different stages that come into play?
So, again, what happens is that as stories are assigned at the beginning of the day, as work proceeds on them throughout the day, the individual reporters who are involved in the pursuit of those stories are checking in constantly with members of our management team and reviewing what they're gathering and the focus of their stories. Once they complete a final, what I'm going to call near final draft of their story, the script is submitted to a producer for review. That review ensures that the story is factually correct and there are no legal issues with it. And from that point, the reporter then works with an editor to complete that story for presentation on the television.
That's literally what I just said in chat.
D'accord. Un peu plus tôt, vous nous avez expliqué comment est survenu.
Okay, you were also talking about how the mistake that happened took place, and I'd like to understand why this mistake happened. Was there a willingness to disinform? Was there malicious intent? And you mentioned that you let go these two employees despite them being unionized, so you reacted quickly, but we're not really seeing into what exactly happened.
There was no malicious intent from my perspective. This was two people who were acting independently to make a particular story work on a given day.
Donc, il y avait une volonté de désinformation.
So there was a willingness to disinform.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, willingness to disinform.
There was no intent to disinform.
That's a lie.
Tout était le même.
But the outcome is...
Oh. That's the 4th time so far in committee and the 12th in Parliament where they've had their servers going off and on. And it's been happening all day. Sorry, guys, this isn't me. This isn't YouTube. This is straight up Parliament.
I take earnestly your opening statement. When situations like this occur, the question is, like, what did you know? When did you know? What'd you do about it? Sounds like you took pretty swift action. I do want to pick up on my colleague and my friend, Mr. Villemier's questions around the process. In a statement posted on social media on September 26th, it mentions that CTV's news editorial standards were not followed in this case. Which CTV news editorial standards were not followed in this case, resulting in these two employees being dismissed?
There were a number of specific policy violations. There were 3 policy violations under the CTV news policy: our policy on misrepresentation, our policy on the utilization of source material, and our policy on the use of sound, specifically interview clips. There were 2 instances in the RTDNA Code of Ethics that were violated: Article 1 as it relates to accuracy, and Article 3 as it relates to authenticity. And then with respect to the Canadian Association of Broadcasters Codes of Ethics, Clause 5, news, and Clause 6, full, fair, and proper presentation were violated.
It sounds like there was a breakdown in a bunch of different ways. Are these standards similar to others that are in other news channels that you might know of? Is this an industry standard that you're referring to?
Yes, the RTDNA Canada and Canadian Association of Broadcasters Codes of Ethics are an industry standard. And I would imagine, though I don't know for certain, each media organization in this country has its own policy.
So what steps does CTV news journalists and newsroom managers typically take to ensure that aired reports meet the current journalistic and ethical standards?
It's through that vetting process that I described earlier.
And typically, how many people would be involved in that process?
That vetting process it depends on the nature of the story. Minimally, it would be one senior manager who reviews a particular story. It could be as many as 2 or 3, depending upon the nature of the story. We also might actually also have a lawyer review the story, depending upon the particulars of it.
I just want to get a sense for the culture, the workplace culture there. Back in February, Bell Canada laid off 6% of its workforce. This immediately impacted CTV News. You're on the record in a story reported to say that multi-skilled journalists would replace news correspondents and technician teams reporting to CTV National News. So would these 2 people be considered multi-skilled journalists?
No, actually, these 2 individuals would have been constructing a story in what I'm going to call our more traditional format. It is the style that we continue to apply for our teams in Toronto and Ottawa, largely because of the nature of the jobs that they do. They cover stories in more depth, in more detail. They are often involved in media scrums where there are multiple interviewers. And there is the more likelihood that the stories that are covered in Toronto and Ottawa could potentially involve hundreds of people live on location.
So I want to get to the heart of the matter. I know that you are in a very fast-paced environment. Certainly the journalists would be in a fast-paced environment. Was it the case through your obviously your dismissal process? And I want to mention to you that being at committee covers you from, you have privilege to speak without it being held against you in civil proceedings. So perhaps you could talk about this. Is it the case that these people were just racing, cutting corners perhaps to meet a deadline? Were they under pressure? I'm still concerned with the points that my friend from the block brought up about the motive, because I'll tell you, sir, on the face value of it, even though this impacted the Conservative Party, of which I have no ideological alignment with, it is still very concerning as it undermines faith, not just in media, but in our democracy. So can you help us understand in your exit interviews, what was the motive specifically?
The motives were different in each case. So in the first case, the clip was altered to take out the reference to the carbon tax, with the explanation given that the story was being reduced in length for time. There was no specific ask of that reporter to alter their story for time. And it was explained to us that that reporter believed that it was understood that the clip's nature was about the carbon tax election.
With 15 seconds left, can you summarize the other side of it?
Yes. There was a technical error in our original record that prevented the video from being presented as was. The editor took the step to manipulate the audio so that the video could cover it.
How long had these two been working? Were they experienced? Was like, because there is a
highly experienced. They were both highly experienced. And
so I would put to you that I would echo the concern of my conservative counterpart that if this was something they felt comfortable doing in this instant, what is to say that they hadn't done it in other instances?
As I said, as I've said a couple of times, this is the first time I have ever seen anything like this occur in a newsroom in my 33 years experience working with television news.
Okay.
How would they know to have done?
Thank you. You know we're over, Mr. Green.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I was just pressing my luck.
That concludes our first round. I did allow extra time in that first round, given the fact that we do have one witness here. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit tighter in the second round. I want to welcome Mr. Scheer to committee. Mr. Scheer, you have 5 minutes. Go
Andrew
ahead,
Scheer. He hasn't been in committee
Thank you very much,
for a while.
Mr. Chair. I just have to go back to what you said. You said that the clip was altered. You showed Canadians something that never happened. And you're telling me now that there was no intent to misinform Canadians and that the reason for that altering of a clip was because it had to be cut down for time. So the words that were cut out were carbon tax election. Okay, now I just timed myself. That took about 1.2 seconds. So you're telling me that there was no intent to misinform Canadians and they had to cut this down for length, and that it would. That took about 1.2 seconds. So you're telling me that there was no intent to misinform Canadians and they had to cut this down for length, and that it would be understood that the quote from the Conservative leader was about a carbon tax election, even though you removed the words carbon tax election. Can you understand how we're having a very difficult time accepting that?
So I want to be clear. What I indicated was that was the explanation offered by the individual involved. That was not my explanation as to what transpired.
Do you accept that, or do you believe it was deliberately done to mislead Canadians?
I do not believe that it was deliberately done, but still, there was a violation of our editorial standards. So these two individuals are no longer part of it.
Do you accept the explanation that was given?
Oh, they got fired. So what? They're at CBC now.
We have made a decision that due to the violation of our editorial standards, that these individuals are no longer part of CTV News.
So what do you believe the motive was?
It is not for me to determine what the motive was.
What, man?
All right.
So you just fired
CTV
them
News
for no
is
reason?
a division of Bell Canada. Is that correct?
Such a liar.
It is.
Bell Canada makes about $2.3 billion in profit based on 2023 numbers. Is that about correct? Would you agree with that?
I'm not aware of how our company performs overall.
Well, I can confirm that that's true. I'm looking at it on your website. CTV News, does the CTV News division turn a profit for Bell Canada?
No, it does not. We lose $40 million a year in news.
Okay. Bell Canada makes a lot of money because it operates in a protected marketplace. Is that correct?
Again, my responsibilities are for managing the operations of CTV News. I'm not an executive at Bell Canada.
Okay, well, I can tell you that it does. It makes an awful lot of money off the backs of consumers because of government policies. In fact, I have here that Bell Canada in the last year lobbied this government over 50 times. That's more than 4 meetings with government officials a month. That's more FaceTime with senior government levels than some Liberal MPs get. And I would just like to point out that Bell would fear a government that was led by a party that believed in consumer-first types of policies and free market and pro-competition policies, and would benefit greatly from a party in power that continued the status quo, or even worse, providing, taking away more avenues for consumer choice, which would allow Bell to continue to make that kind of profit margin. Is CTV News's viewership increasing or decreasing year over year? Would the viewership this year be higher or lower than last year?
There has been a consistent erosion in viewership in broadcast media in this country for a number of years. It's falling year over year.
Yeah,
I wonder why. When you get caught putting things on the air that you then have to admit never actually happened, I can understand why viewership as well as trust would erode. I can
give you a couple of specifics.
Sorry, I only have about a minute left, so I just want to make understand one thing. Does CTV News have a diversity target?
Our goal is to reflect Canada, and the current visible minority percentage in this country, according to the 2021 census, is 26%.
Do you have a target for diversity of political viewpoints at CTV News?
It's our job, as I said earlier, to present all sides of public policy issues in a balanced, accurate, and fair way.
Oh. Come on, you buggers. Parliament is so bad today with their servers, man. Come on. It's okay. Andrew Scheer's testimony was just done now, so they're probably going to be switching over to somebody else.
You have no way of determining whether or not the producers, the editors, and the journalists all have the same Liberal bias. You have no way to determine that.
Quick response, Mr. Gray, please.
Our team do not have a Liberal bias.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scheer. We're going to go to Mr. Fisher on Zoom. Mr. Fisher, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Gray, for being here. I have to say that the questions posed by my colleagues from all parties have been excellent, and I'm sure you've completely expected them. There'll be a little bit of repetition just for some clarity. I want to just reiterate a few of the things that you said in your opening statement. You claim to be the most trusted news source. You said responsibility. You have a responsibility to manage your own affairs. That strikes me as something it's difficult to jive with when we're talking about the elephant in the room today. We're talking about the broadcast. We're talking about inaccuracies regarding a leader of a Canadian political party. Can you, and again, I think you may have touched on some of these, but can you go over with some clarity the steps that you've taken to ensure that you can still say that you at Bell Media, at CTV News, have journalistic integrity and the ethics that you must have under that Bell Media umbrella?
So I'm gonna answer your question in two parts. First, I'm going to talk about this particular incident. We had the matter brought to our attention. We immediately apologized. I took the further steps because of the nature of what had transpired to initiate a fulsome investigation into what I was concerned was a very serious breach of our ethics and our policies. And we made the decision as a result of that to do two things. We made the decision to terminate the two individuals who were involved in that policy breach. And we went to, we took the step to apologize one more time. I think that is entirely appropriate given what transpired. And I think that is indicative of the manner by which we take seriously the trust that Canadians have in us. The second component part to my answer is this. Canadians in this country overwhelmingly choose CTV as their number one source for news with respect to broadcasts at the local level and at the national level every day of the week. And we are also the number one source for digital news in this country. That is not us pandering to an audience.
That's a lie, buddy.
People tuning into us because for 60 years we have presented a product that they know, they like, and they trust.
Buddy, YouTube does more numbers than you do.
I want to thank you, and you seem like a very earnest person, and I want to thank you for the tone that you've struck here. You said you've never seen anything like this before, yet you also said it's impossible. It was impossible to catch this error. Have there been other errors like this that you know, it was impossible to catch them and they've gotten through? Can you give me other examples of something like this that might have happened that slipped through that you didn't get caught?
Errors happen in news. It's the very nature of what it is we do. We try our absolute best to prevent them from going to air or being published. We are never happy. We are absolutely angry at ourselves when there is a failure in our checks and balances. But, you know, they happen, you know, in large measure because of the deadline pressure that exists and by virtue of the volume that we produce. CTV produces approximately 25,000 hours of local news a year. We produce approximately 20,000 hours of specialty news a year, and we produce almost 500 hours of national news broadcasts a year. So, you know, there is a massive volume there. There is, you know, we go to air with stories that have been vetted and screened, and we do our absolute best to present material in a factual, accurate, balanced way at all times. But sometimes, like everyone, mistakes occur.
But you lose $40 million
employees,
a year.
They're gone from CTV. Are they gone from Bell completely?
These two individuals are no longer members of either CTV News or BCE.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Monsieur Villemure pour 2 minutes.
Mr. Villemure for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then we should
Before
get
asking my
conservatives
first
after this.
question, I'll just make a comment on the diversity of political points of view, because words convey a meaning, and I was surprised and offended when I saw Bloc Québécois being qualified as a separatist, because it was used by Jean Chrétien at the time, and today it contains a certain form of negativity, the use of the word itself, but our political position also vis-a-vis English-speaking Canada. So when we talk about diversity of point of view, I'm a little skeptical. So would you have a comment on that?
I mean, we, as I've said repeatedly, endeavor to cover public policy issues in a balanced way, so Canadians can make informed decisions on them. You know, we strive, we endeavor to include all points of view.
Moi, monsieur, je veux juste vous dire un truc.
I want to tell you something. I mean, you cover different points of view. I don't have a problem with that. But every time the word separatist is used, it's a judgment call. So finding a synonym, finding another term is what I'm talking about. But I'd like to come back to the problem that's before us today. And I listened to your explanations, and you are referring to a loss of credibility and confidence going down in media outlets. But, and I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I'm having a hard time having more confidence after your testimony compared to before. So what can you tell us to reassure us and propose some solutions so that the public at large is comfortable and has confidence in CTV?
I fully anticipate that as a result of what transpired in this particular case, although it was an isolated incident, from my perspective, we are going to have to work to rebuild a degree of trust with Canadians and with our audience.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur Villemure. Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, with the experience that you have and with the resources that you have within your reach, what learnings would you provide other news stations in the mainstream environment here in Canada? We have an election coming up. Obviously, this is going to be something closely watched. What have you learned from this situation, and what would be your advice to the other competitors that are in the market in terms of making sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's absolutely critical that we all are reminding our team members of our policies and our expected editorial standards. I think that is probably the biggest and most important learning for us. Can't just take it for granted, because that is something that probably has been the prevailing approach and attitude in newsrooms for a number of years. So that would be number one. Number two, I think it is the constant reinforcement of what I've said repeatedly, that our job is to present all sides of public policy issues. It is to function in a balanced way. Accuracy and fairness are of critical importance. That's our job. That's our role.
Mr. Gray, I do have to reclaim my time. I have about a minute left. You've stated the ways in which CTV is dealing with this. I talk about there's like an ecosystem within the news media sector. So in the event that you were to rebroadcast reports or take information from other news channels, are there any tools or methods that CTV News can use to ensure that these reports do not contain misinformation or disinformation?
So with respect to Canadian stories in broadcast, we run 100% of our own material. We do not source Canadian story content for broadcast from any other source in this country. With respect to international news material, we only align ourselves with organizations that have similar editorial standards to ours.
That's helpful. Thank you very much for your appearance here today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. I understand Mr. Cooper and Mr. Caputo are going to split their time at 2.5 minutes each. We're going to start with Mr. Cooper. Go ahead, and then we're going to follow that with Mr. Housefather, okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gray, you have repeatedly stated here today that you believe that there was no intent to mislead. Let's look at what happened. CTV spliced together 3 short sound bites. Sound bites spliced together, not even in the order that they were stated, to create an entirely made-up sentence, literally fake news, that entirely changed the meaning of what Pierre Poilievre said. So, on what basis do you conclude that there was no intent to mislead? On what basis exactly?
2 now former staff members of CTV News acted in a way that was in breach of our editorial standards.
You made a conclusive statement that there was no intent to mislead. So I'm asking you, on what basis do you draw that conclusion?
Based on 33 years of experience, and this being the first and only time.
Mr. Gray, no one believes you. And you said, for example, that the employee who altered the video, one of the 2 employees, said that he or she believed that it would be understood to be about the carbon tax election. Yet nowhere in the report is there any mention of the carbon tax election. So on what basis could anyone reasonably believe that that statement was made in that context when there was no context? Quite the opposite, disinformation.
I disagree.
It's a fact that there was no mention of a carbon tax election. You have no credibility, and in the face of the fact that CTV peddled a fraudulent news story, and you haven't apologized, you haven't explained the basis upon which you have asserted that there was no intent to mislead, to simply say you disagree isn't good enough. No one believes you.
We have, in fact, apologized twice.
You haven't apologized at all. You said there was no intent to mislead. No intent to mislead, but you can't even articulate the basis of why.
There was no intent to mislead. We have apologized
Say that,
twice.
but I asked you to provide a basis, and you haven't been able to provide a
2:30.
basis.
2:30. Go ahead, Mr. Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gray, I take issue with something that you said, and it's actually been said a number of times at this committee. You characterized this as a mistake. Do you stand by that?
It was the violation
Sir,
of
I asked
our
you,
editorial
was this
standards.
a mistake? You've said that before. You stand by the fact it was a mistake. Is that correct?
I stand by the fact that
Sir,
this story went to air in a way that it shouldn't
Sir,
have.
no, you have called it a mistake. And with all due respect, a mistake is when I put milk in my coffee instead of cream. This was a massive error in judgment. This was a previously unforeseen breach of trust from what was once a trusted media organization. And you have said, picking up on what Mr. Cooper said, the explanation given was not to mislead Canadians. Sir, do you even believe that?
I stand by my testimony today wholeheartedly and unreservedly.
You stand by your testimony that the intent was not to mislead Canadians. Did you talk to these people and get their motives, sir?
There was a fulsome investigation.
But I asked whether, sir, with all due respect, I didn't ask whether there was an investigation. I asked whether you spoke with them. Yes or no?
I did not speak with them beyond having an initial conversation with the reporter the night that this was brought to our attention.
So you had a brief initial conversation, and based on that, you come to committee and say that there was no malevolent intent to mislead based on that. And I ask whether you believe that, and you stand by it. With all due respect, sir, that is an untenable claim that you have arrived at. We are getting ready here for a carbon tax election. At the end of the day, is there one thing that you have done, that you have implemented to ensure that this won't happen again? Just one thing.
Yes, we've terminated 2 individuals.
No, sir, you have countless other employees. I mean, that was possibly the worst answer you could have given. What about moving forward? That is retrospective. What about...
Oh. Sorry, guys. This is not me. This is not YouTube. This is completely
That was possibly the worst answer you could have given. What about moving forward? That is retrospective. What about moving forward? Because, sir, this is what I can say.
Okay, we're back.
Why is it that it always is the Conservatives that are fighting this battle? Why is it? Why is it that when it comes to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, they are not misquoted, but when it comes to Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, this type of thing can happen, and that is shameful.
I'm going to have to end it there.
I disagree with the characterization.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Housefather for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, when you hire employees, do you ask them what political party they support?
No, we do not.
Would it be impermissible for you to do so? I would think under law it would be if you...
Yeah, I would expect that would be not permissible.
Okay. So in this case, so I understand, you know, the general principle that CTV News is not trying to be biased in one direction or another, but let me come back to this incident because I think there are some unresolved questions that I have. In this incident, did you interview personally the 2 journalists or the 2 people in the newsroom that were fired?
No, I did not.
Okay, so that actually surprises me. You did not take the. Have you taken the time since the incident to talk to the two of them directly?
I initiated a due process investigation into this matter that was conducted by professionals, and I was apprised at all steps as to what discussions were occurring. And I came to the conclusion following that investigation that it was necessary for these individuals to no longer be members of the CTV News team.
Which I agree with, because it sounds like a step which needed severe disciplinary action. But my question is, today you've testified as to their motive, and you stated you don't believe that they did something for wrong reasons. I won't use Mr. Caputa's word of mistake, although I think you did use that. How would you know that if you haven't directly taken the time to speak to them to understand?
So based on the explanations offered.
Oh.
Of this reporter and of this producer, to check to see whether they did this in any other occasion? Have you gone back to previous footage?
No. There have
but
never
why?
Been any
why would you have not gone back?
Never.
Like if I know somebody's done something wrong and I know it's incredibly serious, wouldn't I want to go back and see if they've done it before? Like, I mean, you only had to randomly look at, let's say take 10 of 100 of the different stories covered by this reporter to look at that. Why would CTV have not done that?
I didn't feel it was necessary.
Didn't feel it's. I mean, I can say it's not only the Conservatives, from my perspective, that have concerns, because I'm not a Conservative and I have concerns about the way it sounds like this matter was treated in terms of, I don't think it was taken seriously enough. Again, have you changed any policies? Have you changed any company policies as a result of this incident on a forward-looking basis?
We took appropriate action in this case through 2 apologies.
I'm not questioning your apologies. I'm not questioning your apology. I believe you apologized. I believe you fired 2 people. I just want to understand, as a result of what happened, 2 people were allowed to do something that violated policy. What has been done to prevent 2 people in the future from doing exactly the same thing?
So
what has changed in your policy?
I want to correct something that you just said.
Okay.
2 people were not allowed to violate policy. 2 people violated policy, and there were consequences for that violation of policy.
I'm not trying to suggest CTV gave permission to the 2 of them to violate policy. The 2 of them did violate a policy. What has been done to prevent 2 people from doing exactly the same thing tomorrow?
As I've said repeatedly, this is the first time I have ever experienced anything like this in 33 years.
I know, but you haven't gone back to look at the footage of what these people had done before. You didn't go back to previous stories to check to see whether they did it, and just nobody was ever aware of it because no Conservative staffer ever caught it. Have you? Why would you not? Will you undertake to the committee to go back and look at 10 previous stories done by these 2 people to see whether there was anything in there that you may not, or CTV is not aware of?
I don't think it's necessary, because there have never been previous complaints about the conduct of these individuals.
What the hell does this guy do?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Housefather. Unfortunately, that concludes our time with Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray, I want to thank you for appearing before
but we only get an hour?
the committee today and making yourself available.
The committee's 2 hours long.
I am going to suspend as we get set for the next panel, so the meeting is suspended.
Okay, there's still good witnesses coming on after that. So definitely stick around. We got a few minutes here. While we're waiting, I'll show you guys the clip. This is the edited clip that they did. Let me grab it. Sorry, guys, give me a minute. I'm just going to grab the clip for us. Okay, this is it.
We presented a last.
So this is them apologizing first. Sorry, let me turn this down a little bit because this is loud.
Night in
It's very loud. Okay, here we are.
A report on this broadcast, we presented a comment by the official opposition leader Pierre Poilievre that was taken out of context. It left viewers with the impression the Conservative non-confidence motion was to defeat the Liberals' dental care program. In fact, the Conservatives have made it clear the motion is based on a long list of issues with the Liberal government, including the carbon tax. A misunderstanding during the editing process resulted in this misrepresentation. We unreservedly apologize to Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. We regret this report went to air in the manner it did.
For now.
And this is the clip.
Appears safe for now. The events of the last week have raised new questions over the plan's future.
That's why we need to put forward a motion.
The Conservatives announced a non-confidence vote.
That's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election. That's why we need to put forward a motion for a carbon.
The Conservatives.
Sorry, here we go.
A motion for a carbon tax election. That's why we need to put forward a motion for a carbon.
The Conservatives announced a non-confidence.
So right there. So they clipped him out. They stopped him from saying for a carbon tax election. And then they go on in the footage to say that he's calling for an end to pensions and all this stuff when he's saying he wants a carbon tax election. They basically just spliced him.
Pierre never actually said that sentence. This is the lengths that they'll go to try to protect the Liberals and take your attention off of the carbon tax and all the damage it's doing to Canadians. This is what Conservatives are up against. Not just the Liberals and NDP, but their friends in the media. The bought and paid for parliamentary press gallery that will do everything they can to present Liberal policies in a favorable light and make you believe things that aren't even true about the Conservatives. Next time you see a CTV news broadcast painting Conservatives in a negative light, ask yourself this one question. Did that even really happen?
Now, what do you guys... So that's that. That clip was on my channel, so I put that out probably 9 days ago. If you see some of the comments, even people are saying they're not sorry, not out of context, absolutely despicable, you can't trust CBC, CTV, Global... CTV, CBC News junk, defund them. Like, nobody believes this, right? Just not believable. There's absolutely no reason. So while we're waiting, let's go and watch what the House is doing.